So I want to talk a little bit about student discourse and having students talk to each other and students talking to the teacher, but really specifically students talking to each other. Sometimes we talk about this as turn-in talks. Sometimes we talk about student-to-student discourse, whatever terminology you use in your district, in your school. I want to talk a little bit about some of the reasons why we do it. I know a lot of times we hear like, hey, we want more student-to-student discourse. Want more turn-in talks. We want more of this. We want more of this. Maybe leaders come in and say, hey, we want to see more of this. Sometimes we don't actually have the conversation about why we want to see more of it, though. So I want to take a couple minutes here just talking about some of the reasons why we want to have some of that student-to-student discourse. And really, it kind of really comes down just a couple. So really, one of the main reasons we look at is just student engagement. The more students are talking to each other, the more students are talking to each other, to people in the room and listening to each other, they're more engaged in the conversation as opposed to one teacher talking at the room for 10 or 20 or 30 minutes, which again, you're going to get students that are not quite as engaged, and the students are going to kind of stop listening, stop paying attention. So really just student engagement is one big piece. That's definitely not the only piece though, because another thing student to student discourse gives students an opportunity is to practice thinking about how they want to explain their thinking, to practice with another student, saying, hey, this is what I thought about. Here's the strategy I used. And it's very low stress. There's not going to be a lot of people kind of watching this. Students get a chance to do this. Again, low stakes, kind of talking through it, processing through it. Maybe we can identify a mistake. Sometimes we talk about precision in math. And thinking about this, this is a great time when students can often find, oh, you know what? I just realized I made a mistake. And they can do that before it's whole class. They can do that before there's the pressure of the entire class. So thinking about that chance for students to practice, we also talk a lot about using vocabulary, increasing vocabulary. So again, the students get a chance to practice using the vocabulary that maybe is posted on the wall or the vocabulary that maybe we have for this particular unit or this lesson. Students get a chance to practice that individually. The more they practice that, the more they internalize it, the more it's their own language, thinking about that too. And then really a third reason that we can use that student to student discourse is it gives the teacher a chance to walk around the room, to do a learning lap, to walk around and say, okay, where are my students? Which students tend to be understanding this? Which students tend to be a little bit confused? And even more so than that, how are different students solving or approaching a problem? So that we can begin to think about, okay, what are my next steps? If I look around the room and I see that there's a certain strategy students are using, I can really kind of show that and highlight that. If I see there's a strategy some students are kind of getting confused about, I can think about, do I want to show that now? Do I want to show that in small groups? I can process that time. Teachers can also use that time to pause for a minute. That student to student discourse, the teacher does not have to go and check in with every individual student. We can walk around the room, maybe take some notes, but also take a minute to breathe. We do too much of the talking. We put too much of that on ourselves. We think we have to be talking the entire time. When I'm working with educators in the room, I often stop with turn and talks too to give myself some time to think and say, okay, let's see how the room is going. Let's see how the feeling is going. Let's give people a chance to work on that. And then we'll come back and talk about some of those highlights. So really, there's a number of different reasons we might want student-to-student discourse, but three that really do stick out very often when I'm working with educators is we want students to be more engaged. So that engagement piece, we just want them doing more of the activity, being thinking about through some of the math, some of the strategies, being able to be part of that as opposed to just listening. We also want to give students a chance to practice with their classmates, practice with a partner, practice possibly with a couple partners to kind of practice some of the words, practice some of the vocab, check on each other, check for precision. And then we also want to give ourselves a chance as the educators to walk around the room and to get a quick little informal assessment that we can use formatively to say, okay, here are some next steps I want to take. I can pause before I'm just put on the spotlight and say, okay, now that I have a game plan, we'll come back full class and share some of that out. So there's a number of other reasons we might want to have student-to-student discourse, but these three tend to stick out the most. Before we get into how do we make more of that, I thought it's always good to say, okay, these are the reasons we want that to happen. And then in some further videos, we'll talk about, hey, what are some ways we can make that happen? Hopefully that helps out for you. Hopefully you kind of have a deeper understanding of what that looks like and why we do that now so that we can begin to think about, okay, how do I make that happen? Please let me know how that works, and definitely please check out some of those next steps we have here so that we can kind of get more student to student conversation as we're doing that. All right, all. Have a great day.